Hey guys, so I've just finished editing the video that you're about to see, and I just want to let you know before you watch it that originally it was supposed to be one video showing the process and the results, but ultimately due to the length of the video that it ended up being, I decided it would be a better idea to split it out into two videos. So what you're about to watch now is the video where I talk about the process of the renovation, and then during this week, in the coming days, I will release the results so that you can watch it. Hey guys, it's Jonny. So I've been putting this video off for a while because things weren't quite exactly how I wanted it to be with the apartment, but I'm now at a stage where I'm happy to show you guys where we are. Those of you that follow the channel know that last year I started renovating my apartment here in Spain. I did a very small bit of work in the living room and I talked about in a previous video how to do that on a budget. And at the end of last year, beginning of this year, I started some major renovation works in the bathroom and in the kitchen. And the whole thing finished months ago, but there were a few other things I wanted to do after, some final finishing touches before I showed it to you guys. And I'm now at a stage where I'm happy to show you. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through start to finish the process of renovating the apartment. I'm going to touch on some of the specifics for renovating apartments in Spain. So let's go right into the video. So a quick bit of context behind this renovation. This apartment is from 1965. I bought it in 2021 in November, so end of the year. I moved in, it was in a livable condition, a good state, but everything was a bit old, needed a bit of life added to it. And in the apartment in general, but particularly the kitchen and the bathroom, as you'll see as we go throughout the video, is that the space and the rooms of the apartment were, pretty badly used. These are like decent sized rooms, but there were just so many things in there that for me didn't make sense that they were there. They just felt super cramped. And so one of the goals of the renovation was to create a more spacious feel in some of these rooms as well and use that space a little bit better. In previous videos as well, I've talked about how I bought this apartment for me to live in right now, but at some point in the future, perhaps look to rent it out. Whether I'll do that, going forward will all depend on what happens with the current housing law in Spain. Talked about that in another video. Anyways, assuming I go through and I do rent it, I think someone renting this apartment would very much value a more modern bathroom and a more spacious kitchen where they can do stuff, because they're the two rooms typically that add the most value to the property. And so that was something I looked to do as well, make them nicer spaces and also do it in a way that adds value to the property. So those are my reasons behind doing the renovation, and it's really important that before you start any work, you need to understand why you're doing what it is you're doing. Is it because the property is in a state where it really needs renovation work? Is it because you want the property to look a certain way to fit your tastes? Is it that you're trying to do a flip and you're trying to increase the value of the property and make a profit at the same time? Ultimately, the reasons for you doing a renovation will dictate your budget and how you approach it. So it's really important to always keep the end goal in mind. Talking of a budget, set a budget, but don't just set a budget. Set a budget and add about 20% on top of it, because things won't go to plan, stuff will go wrong, as we'll see as we go through the video. And so by having a budget and having a vision and clear goals of what you're trying to achieve with your renovation, it will help you to stay on track and you'll focus on what really matters and what is valuable to you in the renovation. For example, a drop ceiling with embedded lighting looks really nice, but is super expensive and probably is not going to change that much when it comes to the value of the property. Something that looks like the spotlights that you'll see in the bathroom, but without putting the drop ceiling in, because the drop ceiling, for me, it does look nice, but it doesn't add a lot of value. So from an economic perspective for me, it just didn't make sense to put a drop ceiling in the kitchen at least. However, let's say your kitchen doesn't have a dishwasher, like mine didn't, and you want to add a dishwasher, that's time saving that you're buying there. You're investing in something that allows you to save time hand washing dishes. And that for me is something valuable. Also, on some of the lighter items like painting, for example, don't be afraid to give it a go yourself, because it will come out a lot cheaper. Because now, unless you're doing like a complete renovation of the apartment and you want a really nice paint job, if you're doing just bits and pieces here and there, you'll be surprised that, you can do it yourself fairly easily and it's not going to cost you anywhere near as much as paying a professional. So the doors I actually did it myself, paint job, buying stuff from Leroy Merlin, and also, putting some new handles on the door as well. Given my skill, my experience, and then what I paid for the materials, I'm happy with how it came out. So that's kind of from the perspective of your vision, what you want to do with the apartment. Now let's talk about some of the administrative things that you'll need to go through when you're living in Spain and you want to renovate an apartment. So if you live in an apartment building like I do, where there are other neighbors in other apartments, it's always a good idea to first speak to the president of the Comunidad de Vecinos, so like the the neighbors community essentially. Because renovating certain things, particularly exterior parts of your property or parts of the property that look into communal areas, will probably require you to get the approval of the neighbors to do those works. Also, if you're doing a major renovation as well, where you're changing the complete layout of an apartment. In my case, as it was just the bathroom, it was interior. I wasn't changing the structure of the apartment. And in the case of the kitchen, it was just installing some new units and some new fittings. After speaking to the community president, he gave me the green light. Didn't have to go through, the neighbors committee or anything like that. But as I say, always a good idea to speak to the president first to inform them of what you're planning to do, how long it's going to take, and then they'll be able to tell you if there's anything more required. And it can also depend on the president and the group of neighbors as well. Some might be more strict than others. My building is pretty relaxed, so not too much to go through in my case. But in different parts of the country, in different buildings, it's a different story. The next thing to find out is if you need any licenses or permits from the town hall, and I'm not going to lie to you, this is not the most straightforward task. Even as someone who's lived here for 4 years and is fluent in Spanish, I couldn't figure out how to navigate my town hall's website to pay the correct tasa. I had to go to the town hall, explain what it was I was looking for, what I needed to do, and then they talked me through the process essentially. And I ended up paying more than I needed to. So if you're willing to try and navigate your town hall's website, by all means go for it. What I would honestly recommend is either going to the town hall in person or giving them a phone call, explaining what it is you want to do, and then they'll be able to put you in the right direction. Basically, things you'll need licenses for are if you want to put bags or a skip in the street for any rubble from where you're doing works, or if you're living in an old building, for example, or in one of these buildings where you want to change the structure of the apartment, then you might need a construction permit from the town hall. And again, as I say, this can vary by town hall. It can vary by autonomous community. For example, the Madrid community is pretty relaxed on some of these things, but the town I live in is a bit more strict. And then there are regions in Spain which are more strict than Madrid when it comes to doing works and stuff. And how much you have to pay for a skip or to put bags in the street will all depend on how much space you're taking up and how long you're keeping them there. When it comes to bags, it's really not that much. I had a few bags in a really small area in the street for about 3 days, and it cost me 14 euros in the end. So for, bags, probably not so much. Skips, I guess it might be in the few €100s. Now let's talk about finding a person or a company to work with when it comes to doing a renovation. So there are a few ways you can do this in Spain. The way I first used to find people when it comes to doing works in my apartment, there's an app called Timbrit. What you can do in Timbrit is basically you can put in a request, say, I want to renovate my bathroom, I want to change my electrical installation, send some photos, description of the work, and your request will basically be sent and professionals will get in touch with you to come and organize a visit and whatnot and understand and give you a quote. Which, if you're not sure where to start, this can be a good option. And the professionals on the site all have ratings and reviews from prior work, and they can give you samples of work they've done in the past as well. Another option is going through one of the hardware stores here in Spain. So for example, Leroy Merlin, which is one of the biggest ones, they have their own renovation service in each different department that they have. So you can sit down with someone from the kitchens section or someone from bathrooms, and you can tell them what it is you want to do, what your plans are, and they'll be able to come up with a plan and a quote for you. And they have approved external partners that they'll send over and then come and do the work for you. And as you can probably imagine, it'll be all with Leroy Merlin materials as well. And finally, the last one, which I strongly recommend, is word of mouth recommendations. So if you know someone who's had work done and they can recommend you someone, then it's a really, really great way of finding people. Because if someone will personally recommend you someone who's done work in their house, then it means that they were satisfied with the job and they like the way they work, and it can give you a sense of reassurance that you're working with a good professional when it comes to doing your own project. And so for my kitchen and my bathroom, I ended up going with people who were recommended to me. The person who did the bathroom, I actually got a quote for several €1,000s cheaper than another company that were going to do a very similar job in the bathroom, so I was very happy to save some money there. And the guy who did the kitchen as well did it for a very reasonable price, I believe. So now you've got a couple of potential options for who can do the work for you. How will the process go? So what should happen first is the person should come round, take some measurements. You should explain clearly what it is you want to do. And then once they've got their measurements, they've got an idea of what it is you want to do, then they should be able to come back and give you a quote. When they give you a quote, if possible, if they can give you a 3D model of what the final result would look like, then it's even better, because you can start to get an idea of what it will look like rather than take, samples of materials and try to piece it together in your own head. So for the kitchen, the guy who did the kitchen for me, he was able to give me like a 3D generation of what it would look like. The guy who did the bathroom didn't, but kind of from the materials that he suggested, I was able to imagine what it would look like. The person doing the job for you as well will most likely recommend some materials, but don't be afraid to either pick your own materials or review other options of materials that they have. I would certainly say as well, don't compromise on quality when it comes to materials. You don't have to have the most expensive, the nicest materials, but definitely don't buy something just because it's cheap and is acceptable. Definitely buy something that will last and that won't get damaged, by water in case of the kitchen countertop. So the countertop previously was like a cheap one, and I was thinking about going with the same theme and just getting something that looks nice but is not an expensive material. But in the end, given with the old countertop, that started, because it was like wood underneath, with the water, it started to lift up and then create a bit of damage. When you're agreeing to work with someone as well and they've given you a quote, make sure you're very, very clear about what the payment terms are. Most likely they will ask for some money up front, and that will typically be to cover the material cost, and then they'll ask for maybe one or several installments whilst the work is going on, and then once the job is finished, you can pay the rest at the end. One important thing to note as well is that in Spain, when you're getting quotes, a lot of vendors will often give you the quote without VAT included. Now, VAT is typically 21% on these services, so you'll need to factor that in as well when they give you a quote, and make sure that that also fits within your budget. Now, from a finance perspective, of course, you can take out loans to finance this. The vendor might even offer financing or payment options themselves. Me personally, I would much prefer to pay for a major renovation in cash. It hurts to see all that money go out at once, but at the same time, it's paid, it's done. Once the renovation's done and you've paid for it, you don't have to worry about it anymore. You're not 6, 9, 12 months down the line still trying to pay off something with interest on top as well, particularly given the interest situation at the time of this video as well. But that's just my personal view. Let me know what you think in the comments. So coming to the actual work. So depending on what it is you're doing, you might need to leave your apartment. If you need to leave your apartment for a period of time as well, make sure you factor in the cost of staying somewhere else into your renovation budget, if that's applicable as well. Me, I was able to stay somewhere for free. Fortunately, it was very, very good news for me. But, if you do have to stay somewhere, and depending on how long you're outside the apartment, then that could cost you quite a bit, and you should factor it in as well, which was the case for me. Now, I was very lucky in the fact that the bathroom work that you'll see, I was actually in the UK. So I had minimal disruption from the perspective of the bathroom. It was all done while I was away, and I was able to manage everything from a distance, which was really good. The kitchen was a little bit more tricky because we were delayed starting, because I only finalized, the arrangements just before Christmas, when all of the factories that produce materials had closed, and so we were only able to get started later. And in addition, things were delayed a bit because I needed a plumber to install the new water heater before any kitchen units could be put up, so that delayed things a few weeks. Funny story, by the way. So whilst works were going on here in January and February, I would come back here to record a lot of the videos that I put out at the time. And because the apartment was just chaos, you probably have seen in some videos there's boxes, there's like a clothes dryer in the background, so it was complete chaos. But if you've spotted those in earlier videos this year, that's the reason why. Now, when work is finished, there are a few important things you should do. First, absolutely test everything that's been installed to make sure it all works, because you might find that something doesn't work. For example, in the bathroom, I found that when I flushed the toilet, the cistern kept dripping water after the flush was done. So obviously not a major problem, but I didn't want to be paying extra water for something that should flush normally. I also had some of the silicone where the new shower screen was kind of peeling away and water was leaking through, so I asked for that to be resealed as well. And then in the kitchen, when it was done, I noticed that there was a bit of a funny smell coming from the sink, and it was because a trap to get rid of the bad odors hadn't been installed. So I asked the guy to come back and install a trap so that I wouldn't have to deal with the bad odors. Double check your final invoice, make sure that it's aligned with your expectation versus the original quote. And if there are differences, make sure you understand why as well. So for example, in my own renovation works in the bathroom, I wanted to install an extractor to get rid of some of the steam because previously there wasn't one. And so there was kind of a hole in the wall where there was like a few railings where we wanted to put the extractor. But in the end, couldn't put it because where that hole led to was essentially blocked by one of the structural pillars of the building. So it wasn't possible to install an extractor. And so guys, we've reached the point of the video where I'm going to reveal what my new bathroom and new kitchen look like. So enjoy.